Educational Insights, a Superintendent's Podcast. Hosted by Brooke Olsen-Farrell. Episode number 13, Discussion with Slate Valley's new Athletic Director, Ramey.
Hi there, Slate Valley. This is Brooke Olsen-Farrell, Superintendent of Schools, and I'm here with Ramey, Slate Valley's new Athletic Director. And I'd like to give him a chance to give a little background to viewers about himself and the various positions he's held in the district over the years.
Thanks for having me. Well, I've been here most of my life, if we're going to tell the truth. So this is my second tour as the athletic director. I was here from 2006 to 2014 and left for 10 years to coach college softball, which was a great opportunity. And things happened over the course of the last 9 months, so to speak, and this position reopened. It was a good time for a change and come back, and feeling a little bit too old to keep traveling through New England chasing softball players. So when this presented itself, I was interested again, and it came back. And of course, most people know I coached here for a long time and have been involved in one way or another for, believe it or not, close to 40 years. So this is kind of like coming home again. So it's all good.
Well, it's great to have you back. So can you describe a typical day as the athletic director here now that this position oversees grades 5 through 12 athletics?
Yeah, the typical day is not the typical day it was when I was here the first time, and that's for sure. The 5 through 8 piece is certainly a new challenge for me, particularly the 5 and 6 piece, because of the 4 different schools and those kids aren't here. So trying to make sure the logistics of everything they need and the coaches and tying all the pieces together with administration and nurses and things like that. It has its challenges. Probably the biggest piece with that is the transportation and trying to make sure that kids can get where they need to go and are going to be supervised when they get where they get to. And so that piece is new, fortunately, this fall. We had some really good people in the coaching positions. Transition and acclimation to working with the school principals was pretty good overall because I'm somewhat familiar with them, and so that part went pretty good. But we had really good people coaching those teams. It took a lot of interest and extra time to make sure that the kids were taken care of and looked out for. So that part was a real positive that made it a little bit easier for me, even though it felt some days that it was a lot to just make sure it was all going to happen. So, and the transportation, obviously, when I was here before, we controlled our own busing, and that's not the case now. So trying to juggle all that and work through Kylie and making sure all those little loose ends and dropping kids off at one place to get on another bus to get to another place that's not that far away is all new to me.
Especially with the shortage of drivers and buses sometimes, so that makes it a little extra challenging.
The 9 through 12 piece is similar to what it was before, for the exception we really don't have as many kids as we used to have. So juggling that, the younger kid piece that maybe isn't quite ready to play varsity sports and keeping them involved in their teams and getting them opportunities to play at a varsity level in certain games, or finding pieces so they can still have opportunities to play. That's new as well. We used to have full JV schedules and full JV teams, but we've gotten smaller.
Right. So speaking of this fall and our coaches, can you give a little recap of our team's performances this fall?
I'd be happy to do that. We've had a great fall. All of our teams really had successful seasons. And you can look at our field hockey schedule, and the wins didn't quite add up the way they wanted them to, but at the same time, of their, I think, 11 losses, 9 were by 1 goal, and they were in the mix and went to overtime in the quarterfinals. They were very competitive on a team that only had 1 senior. So hopefully, we don't have a feeder program for the field hockey piece, so hopefully the kids that were there and were really competitive will put in some time in the off season to maybe improve a little bit on their offensive skills, because defensively they were really good. Boys and girls soccer teams were phenomenal this year. Girls won the SVL B division, went undefeated, advanced to the state semifinals was a young team overall. Obviously, we had some really good seniors, but one of our best players suffered a season-ending injury 24 seconds into the season. So Terry Perry had to really regroup that group of kids and get them organized to go through and have the season that they had. So that was pretty incredible. Boys soccer advanced to the semifinals as well. Really competitive against a team that's like the 4-time defending state champion in the semis, so they were good. Cheer numbers were really up. and they did a great job during their performances at the football games. We brought the band back. Sam Adams does a great job with our band, and she's had them playing at all the games. Cross country kids were really successful and had a bunch of PRs, and obviously this Saturday our football team is competing for the Division II state championship with a new coaching staff, or at least a new head coach, but familiar coaches. But on a team last year that was undefeated and lost in the semis, for them to come back and be where they are when they lost some of their better players is pretty impressive. So hopefully Saturday we can pull this off. It'd be a great accomplishment.
Yep, absolutely. So how do you work to bring a positive culture to athletics here in Slate Valley?
I think you need to communicate with people. The biggest piece is, having good communication and having the right people in the right places. I think also you have to have expectations. You have to have expectations for your athletes and your coaches and your community. So, the positive piece, all those things are connected. Obviously, our community is a huge piece of what we do here. Small school, small town, and we thrive and sometimes live and die way too much on what our kids do in athletics. But it's like that in a lot of small Vermont towns, right? It's a source of pride. So I think, there's good days and bad days. I think one of the things, you can't get too high and you can't get too low. You're never as good as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think it is. So just keep trudging along one day at a time. But the positive piece is all through having the right people and having good communication, and again, expectations. If kids know what's expected of them and they follow the rules, they tend to be a little bit more successful. And I don't think it's real hard. If you knowingly break the rules, you've already accepted the consequence. So to keep it positive, just stay ahead of everything. Stay ahead, no surprises, minimal surprises, and then you can kind of keep going.
So off of what you just said, how do you balance the athletic piece and the academic piece and work with teachers in school?
Well, I tried to be, I think for me, it's being present. So if I'm present, and I think I have a good enough relationship, and I don't want to say reputation, but I've coached enough and been around long enough that even teachers that aren't familiar with me personally are familiar with my name a little bit. So I've had teachers come to me if kids aren't pulling their weight in class or misbehaving and say, okay, I've tried, they're not responding, can you help? So it's from that part, it's like we meet with the kids, we get the coaches involved, and you need to do your part in the classroom. And if you can't do it, you don't get football practice, or you don't get soccer practice or field hockey practice. So we don't and again, it's staying ahead of it. Trying to stay ahead of it and make the kids understand. So we've had a few of those situations this year where teachers have been comfortable enough to come to me and ask, all right, can you help me? And for the most part, kids will respond for a little while, right? And then they'll try to fall back a little bit. And sometimes it's no excuse. They're just not interested in a particular topic in class or whatever they're in. So and especially if they're 15-year-old boys, right? So sometimes we've got to reel them back in a little bit. But overall, it's just the balance piece is, they need to take care of their academics first. And some kids are naturally going to be highly motivated students, and some kids we got to find other little niches to keep them interested. So we just try to do that. But they need to follow the rules too.
So as we, enter budget planning for FY26, are you seeing any potential budget constraints on the horizon? Or as a district, are we considering some different options?
Well, I think obviously prices are higher and they seem to be going up consistently. So one of the things, having come to this position before, in my first term, I was coming out of the sporting goods world. So I understood purchasing, I understood what the markup was, and now the whole sporting goods industry has changed. So the big guys bought up all the little guys, and they've got the market. And what I went from being Eric Ramey at Fairhaven Union High School, who had some pull at Keys 2 Sports, right, to I'm just a guy in high school in Vermont working with Game One or working with BSN, which are national sporting goods power. So to lose that personal touch has impacted our pricing scheme a little bit. So for me to try to figure out how we're going to go about that piece is still new. I'm only 3 months into that part of it and what we're paying and getting back into purchasing for all sports. So that part's still in the learning curve for me. So I really don't know exactly where number-wise we'll be with pricing. But at the same time, I think if we emphasize to our coaches and our kids that we have to take care of our inventory, so we're not replacing things on an annual basis. So a lot of the things that we buy should get us through multiple years, whether it's uniforms or whether it's particular things for sports that are goals or soccer nets. Soccer nets are not an every year thing. That should be a 4 or 5 year purchase. So just getting that part figured out, I think will help me going forward. I think from a budget issue, I think transportation is enormous. And what we're, the bus companies have us a little bit, right? So, and with that said, I don't want to begrudge them because the lady we work with who schedules our buses is phenomenal. So she's a great communicator for us and very helpful. But that piece and those charges are certainly significant, right? And probably significantly more than when we were doing this before. So I think that's one of the bigger challenges. But other than that, whether some of the middle school sports stuff, I have to figure that out, the 5, 6 and the 7, 8. But with 7, 8 being up here now, again, I didn't have any part in that before because it was at all the sending schools. So I think that kind of takes care of itself. But that 5, 6 piece is something we have to keep an eye on and try to figure out how we're going to go about with that.
So mentioning the 7, 8, are you seeing benefits with the 7, 8 sports program being consolidated here?
Well, I think it allows our varsity coaches to have a little bit more input once in a while and have those kids here practicing so they can see it. And a lot of times the middle schools will practice on the same field as the varsity team, which is okay. But again, we don't have that JV team like we used to have. So, we still have 2 programs going or 2 teams going. But again, I'm just kind of feeling that out a little bit my first time through. I wish we could improve our numbers for some of those sports and field hockey in particular to build that roster up. But I think the middle school being up here is a good thing from that perspective. The winter season will be a little bit different, right? Because we only have 1 full-size gym here, so we've got to send the middle school kids back to the grade school and have that piece. But I certainly don't think it's a bad thing to have the middle school up here. And then, again, we mentioned, as we're getting a little bit smaller, we get a little better feel for what kids are coming up, what kids maybe, based on numbers, can move up a little sooner. Because now if the numbers are low, we can take advantage of some 8th graders in certain situations. But that's not always the best situation, but there's certainly cases where some of those kids can come up and compete and perform. But again, it's based on numbers, and just because they're in 8th grade and talented enough, if we have enough numbers in the program already in 9 through 12, those 8th graders don't necessarily get to do that. So a little bit of a numbers game.
And so finally, looking forward to the winter season, what are some things that you would foreshadow there?
Well, basketball is pretty big around here, right? And we've had a lot of success over the last few years. So again, we know what the community is going to look for and what their expectations are. And our gym is going to be full, whether it's the boys or whether it's the girls, every home game. And, the ultimate goal for both those teams in this community is to get to the Berry Auditorium. So that's always exciting. I think both teams are in pretty good position right now to have really good seasons. You hope we don't have any injuries or unforeseen things that come in and create bumps in the road, but you never know about that. Wrestling, Scott Shattuck retired after an incredible 30 years being here and being completely dedicated to that program. I think we're really fortunate to have Matt Toscano, who is a Fairhaven wrestler, who won a state title, who's been in the coaching world for the last decade or more, to have him come in and take over and kind of pick up what Scott's left for us and his legacy. And then, so maybe we get a few more wrestlers involved to go from there. Indoor track is always really competitive, and it's hard to train for indoor track because, we don't have an indoor track. So we learn how to run in the halls and run upstairs and stay outside as long as we can before the snow flies. And then our cheer team will do some competitions, which usually starts towards the back end of January. And hopefully those numbers hold where they are for the fall. Dylan does a great job with them. And bowling. So bowling's new for me. It's was just kind of taking off when I left this position the first time. And since then, we've won 2 state championships and had 2 individual state champions. So I know we got some kids that are excited to do that. And I bowled when I was a kid, so I think it's a pretty great sport. So it fits a niche, for the kids that aren't basketball kids or aren't wrestlers. It's a different sport. So I think that's pretty cool.
Great. Well, can't wait to see what happens this winter. Well, thank you, Eric, for joining me today. Until next time, Slate Valley.
Slate Valley Unified Union School District, November 2024.